pleasure to introduce our next speaker. She's been a wonderful friend and a supporter for, obviously in recent time for the Muslim community, but for a very, very long time, for issues such as these that deal with confronting prejudice, racism, fascism, all sorts of isms that break up society and demoralize it and make it much, much weaker. It's a great pleasure to introduce the convener of Stop the War Coalition, Lindsey.
Thanks very much, Anas. I want to make 2 points really in the time that I have. The first is that when we set up the Stop the War Coalition, which is nearly 9 years ago now, one of the things that we did when we set it up was to add 2 demands on top of Stop the War. One was against the attacks on civil liberties, which we were certain would come as a result of the war on terror, and the other was against any racist backlash on the Muslim community, because it was obvious then, in 2001, as has already been described by Bob very, very well, that there was qualitative change in what happened to Muslims in this country. They've always been subject to racism and discrimination and some of the worst housing and education and all those things, but the war on terror led to a new development in terms of Islamophobia and the depth of Islamophobia. And of course, it's very easy to see why. But when, as our government is now doing, you wage a war in Iraq and Afghanistan, and you support the Israelis over Palestine, when you wage this war in Afghanistan, when you say, we are fighting there to stop the war coming to the streets of Britain, what you're actually saying is an enemy within. And the enemy within is the Muslim community. That is the message that is sent every time a politician gets up and links the war in Afghanistan with what is happening here. And that is what allows the media to come out with their filthy depictions of Muslims. It's what allows the politicians to believe that they can win votes by attacking the Muslim community. And of course, it's what creates the breeding ground for the BNP, for the EDL, for all of these people. And that is why there is this intimate connection between what they are doing there and what they are trying to do here. And that is what we have to campaign about. Now, people say, lots of people on the liberal left and sometimes on the left say, this isn't racism against Muslims. Just because we're against their religion and we don't like women wearing the hijab or wearing the burqa, it doesn't mean it's racism. Now, when you have, as happened recently in the northern Italian town of Novara, a woman was fined €500 for wearing a veil as she went to prayers by the council which is controlled by the racist Northern League, don't tell me that isn't about racism. And don't tell me it has anything to do with women's rights. Because it is up to women themselves how they want to dress and what they want to wear. And we now have, in Belgium, they're going to ban the burqa, even though hardly any Muslim women in Belgium wear the burqa. They're going to ban the face veil in France in public places. These are severe attacks on the civil liberties of anybody who wants to practice their religion or their culture, and they should be condemned by everybody on the left rather than condoned by some of the politicians and some of the people who claim that they're anti-racist. This has become the last respectable racism in Europe, and we have to stop it getting any worse. The reason that we do is people have referred to what happened with anti-Semitism in Europe in the 1930s and what the result was, the terrible catastrophe of the Holocaust in Hitler's Germany. Let's just remember 2 things. This didn't start as racism over Jews. It started with cultural demands that people had to conform, that they had to seek out whether their grandmother was actually Jewish and registered that way. You can see film of old Jewish people having their noses measured to see whether they were genuinely Jewish or not. That is what Hitler's Germany did to people. And don't think this is about integration. The German Jews were the most integrated in Europe, and they never believed this could happen to them. We don't want integration on those terms. We want an end to racism, and that is what this conference is about. So I hope that people will come away from this conference. It's a shame that it's been curtailed, but it couldn't be curtailed for a better reason than to go and demonstrate in solidarity with the people of the flotilla and the people who campaign in support of the Palestinians. But please do go away from this conference campaigning and organising to make sure that this disease of Islamophobia doesn't take hold any more than it has, and that we can show that united Muslim and non-Muslim, black, white, Asian, whatever background we come from, that we are united in fighting racism and in fighting the wars that create it.